guys, it's Ngo here, and it's been a very long time since I've spoken to all of you. I'm still alive, just in case you were wondering. It's just been a very busy few months for me. Every time I wanted to sit down and film something else has just come up. But I'm here now with my top 15 books of 2015. For the purposes of keeping this video interesting, I didn't put any rereads, so let's get straight into it. Coming in at number 15 is The Bane Chronicles by Cassandra Clare. I just felt like this book gave us a lot of insight into some characters who didn't get a lot of attention in the Mortal Instruments series. For example, Raphael, Camille, and even Alec. It was a really fantastic collection, and my thing with novellas is that they have to be necessary to a series. They can't just be there for the sake of making more money or having an extra book in the series, and this collection of novellas definitely felt necessary to the series, and it just makes me extra excited for all the new Cassandra Clare material that's going to come out soon. Coming in at number 14 is A Work in Progress, which is an autobiography or memoir by Connor Franta, who is a YouTube star. A lot of the ideas that are explored in this book, it's nothing new, it's just the way that Connor presents them. It's very humble, it's very personal, and it's just very touching. I actually did cry in some of the chapters, and I feel like the way that he talks about some of the issues, it's not preachy, and it's like sitting down with a cup of tea with a friend talking about life. Number 13 is a book that I read on my e-reader, and that is Lola and the Boy Next Door by Stephanie Perkins. This is the second book in the Anna and the French Kiss companion series. I know that out of the 3 books, Lola is probably not one of the most popular girls, but I really respected some of her decisions. A lot of the things that were talked about in the book really resonated with me. Just because someone loves you or cares about you doesn't mean that you should take that for granted, and you really should try and earn and deserve that love rather than just taking it as a given. Number 12 is Love, Rosie by Cecilia Ahern. This was actually a surprise favorite of mine. I feel like the movie was marketed for a young adult audience, but this is definitely more adult fiction, and it just was so real and raw. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't fluffed up. There was a lot of just real life issues in here, and I loved it. I love the idea that sometimes there is a right moment, right time, and right place for things, and other times you just have to seize the moment, seize the day, and just do whatever it is that makes you happy. Coming in at number 11 is Let's Get Lost by Adi Al-Sayed, and this again was a surprise favorite of mine. When I read the blurb, I was like, here we go, here's another It Girl story, here's another road trip story, been there, done that, but it was actually so much more. Layla was such a charismatic character, such a girl next door. You just feel like she's one of those people who, if she was a person in real life, you'd want to be friends with her, and I really appreciated the message of the book. The book is split into 5 parts. Each part focuses on a particular place that Layla stops in, and a particular person or people whose lives she kind of becomes entangled in. And one of the things that I thought was done really well was that each plot line, each little mini storyline was wrapped up really well in that particular section of the book, if that makes any sense at all. It's definitely one of my favorite contemporary reads of 2015. Coming in at number 10 is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas, which is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. Again, Sarah J Maas is just one of those authors like Cassandra Clare, like J.K. Rowling, who are able to create an entire cast of characters that you just adore and you just love and become emotionally invested in their lives. And that's how I felt about A Court of Thorns and Roses. I loved how well fleshed out the characters were. I thought the plot was done really well. It was very fast paced. The ending was a bit too convenient for my taste, and that's why it's a little bit lower in my list of top 15, but it's still one of my favorite reads of the year, and I can't wait for the next installment in the series. My next favorite is Crown of Midnight, which is book 2 in the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J Maas. I feel like it's a book where you get to know a little bit more about Selena, and you get that assassin side of her coming out, which wasn't really emphasized in the first book. Also, a particular ship that I adore sets sail in this book, and so it definitely is one of my favorites of the series so far. Coming in at number 8 is The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J Maas, and this book gave me all the feels. It definitely is, again, one of those companion novels that is really necessary to the series. Again, it gave a fantastic insight into Selena as a character, although I do feel that some of the things that were explored in this would have been better put in Throne of Glass rather than reserving it for a novella. I love how this book tied in with the rest of the series, and how some of the characters that were introduced here come back to us in Queen of Shadows, and I just I feel like if you've read the Throne of Glass series and you haven't read this, you are definitely missing out. Coming in at number 7 is Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. This was my favorite book in this series. This is a book where I fell in love with the characters. Like I loved Will and Tessa and Jem in the first book, but it was the supporting cast that I was a little bit about, and it was really this book that made me feel for them and made me love them in the way that I loved the entire cast of the Mortal Instruments series. Also, it has Jem on the cover, and you know, it's my husband, so I can't not put a book with my husband on the cover in my top 15, am I right? The next book I read on my e-reader, and that was Shadow and Bone, which is the first book in the Grisha trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. And Shadow and Bone was my favorite of the 3. I thought it was a great introduction to the series. It was a great first installment. It just really hooked you in. I read that book so fast. I devoured it. Despite the fact that I gave them all 5 stars, I was a little bit more satisfied with the things that happened in the first book, and I particularly enjoyed the plot twist, although I guess it's a bit of a love-hate relationship because I thought it was brilliant and at the same time I hated that it happened. The next book I listened to on Audible, and that was Disruption by Jessica Shervington. It makes me so sad that people don't know about this book more. I'm not really going to go into much detail about the plot because that would make this video too long, but just know that it was one of my favorite reads of 2015. I feel like the world that was created in this book was very feasible, something that I could definitely see happening in the future, which makes it extra scary. The main character, Maggie, was just a fantastic female lead. I loved her strength, I loved her honesty, and her relationships in the book are some of my favorite fictional relationships of all time. Coming in at number 4 is a book that I also listened to on Audible, and this was Vicious by V.E. Schwa. The characters were amazing. I really liked that Victor was a bit of an anti-hero and that some of his decisions were sort of morally questionable. It was just really refreshing to read about a character like that, and it was just really great to read a book that was not romance driven. It was just like reading a modern day X-Men kind of thing, which if you know me, you know I love. Number 3 is another book that I listened to on Audible, and that was The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer by Michelle Hodkin. I read the trilogy so fast that honestly the events of the books kind of blur into one for me, but I feel like the first book was a standout. I really liked the psychology behind it. It was a nice deviation from some of the fantasy books that I'd been reading, and it was a lot darker, it was a lot scarier than what I was used to, and I am for sure planning on rereading it this year. For my top 2 books of 2015, I really couldn't decide which one I wanted to put as number 2 and which one I wanted to put as number 1 because I feel like they're both outstanding reads for me. I couldn't fault either of them. They were both 5-star reads and just books that I will treasure till the end of time. The first one I want to mention is Queen of Shadows by Sarah J Maas, which is the latest installment in the Throne of Glass series. This book was just perfection. I loved the female friendships in here. I loved how everything came together in this book, and I loved Selena's transformation. There is not one thing in this book that I would really change. I think it is my favorite book in the Throne of Glass series so far. The other book that I want to mention is The Diviners by Libba Bray, and I listened to this on Audible. Sarah from Sarah Without an H mentioned that the audiobook version was actually really good. I can understand why Sarah loves the book so much. The setting, the plot, the pacing, the ideas behind it, it was just something that was very unique. I loved the characters, I loved how it was set in the 1920s, I loved the magical elements. It goes straight into the action. The first chapter I remember being specifically extremely creepy, and I did not sleep well that night. But despite that, The Diviners was one of my favorite reads of 2015. It was a 10 out of 5 stars. It definitely deserves one of the top spots in my ranking, and I would highly recommend it. So guys, that is it for my video. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to those of you who are still watching despite my month or 2 month long hiatus. I'm going to try and upload more, but if you want to talk to me outside of YouTube, you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Instagram. If you want to talk to me through WhatsApp or Voxer or Facebook Messenger, let me know, we can make that happen. I hope you guys all had a fantastic festive season and that you ate a lot of food and spent a lot of time with your loved ones. Thank you so much again for watching. I love you all very much, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye now.
But if you like causing trouble up in hotel rooms, and if you like having secret